On June the 9th, 2015, Nigeria's 8th National Assembly was inaugurated.
Bukola Saraki and Ike Ekweremadu emerged leaders of the upper chamber, while Yakubu Dogara and Yusuf Lasso emerged leaders of the lower chamber. Now, the 8th session was one born out of many politics and controversies. And for the greater part of the first legislative year, those shenanigans took center stage.
Indeed, now on June the 9th, the 8th National Assembly clocked 2 years in office. And a review this legislative years in the Senate shows that of the 503 bills introduced, 79 bills are waiting first reading, while 7 executive bills were received. And for the House of Reps, records show that 159 bills were passed, 1,055 bills were introduced, while 500 bills are currently being processed for deliberations.
Now, though it's not up to the legislative arm of government to score itself, some of the high points is the introduction of electronic voting system in the affairs of both houses, the passage of the Petroleum Industry Governance Bill, and the disclosure of the details of National Assembly 2017 budget. Well, as the National Assembly recently clocked 2 years in office, Nigerians have been reviewing their performance so far.
So, how far so far? We have a lawmaker who, of course, was in the 6th National Assembly, Senator Olorunimbe Mamora, in the studio with us. Good morning, and it's always a delight to have you on the show.
Yes. Good morning. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, indeed. Now, the 8th Assembly has been patting itself on the back, saying if you had to do a comparative analysis between the 8th Assembly and all of the other National Assemblies, this particular one has done excellently well. Are you on the same page with them?
Definitely not.
Okay.
Why?
Well, yes, I give it to the 8th National Assembly for what they have been able to do. You see, the people who are in the best position to assess, they are the people out there who elected the members into those houses, that is the Senate and the House of Representatives. But I will say, all in all, they've not done badly. I will still give the National Assembly a pass mark.
Okay.
But definitely I will not give excellent.
Okay, but in terms of activity, really, let's look at it. The 8th Assembly, Senate Assembly, has passed about 96 bills. The 5th Senate passed 65 in 4 years. The 6th Senate passed 23, while the 7th Senate passed just about 28 bills. Just using that really to compare.
Now, it would be erroneous totally to assess any legislative house based on the number of bills passed. It's absolutely erroneous, and take that from me.
Okay.
Because lawmaking is not the only function of a legislative house. So you must take on board all the other activities expected of a legislative house. You're talking of lawmaking, you're talking of representation, which, as far as I'm concerned, is the most important role. Because the people there, they were elected to represent, you know, from various constituencies. You also have the oversight function. You have the legitimizing role, confirmation of appointments and all that. All these are part and parcel of what is expected. So it is not appropriate, it is not proper to do the assessment based on just one item. Okay. And in the 8th Assembly particularly, I mean, one of the reasons why I give it to them, at least to have done something, at least commendable, you know, is the fact that you also have to look at what I call the afflictions of the 8th Assembly. And what are these afflictions? The mode of emergence of the leadership in both houses. It doesn't seem to me to be in tandem with the expectations of the leadership of the party.
But some people would say they were able to go past that particular episode.
No.
Gotten their hands together.
It definitely affected, if still not affected. But I think they have done a lot to put that behind them. But it affected. If you take, for example, the Senate, there was a crisis of attrition, if you like, where some of the senators themselves, they were daggers drawn with the leadership. What I call political autoimmune disease. Autoimmune disease, when your own cells, I mean, it's a clinical thing. Your cells are fighting you. They are working against you. So you had that. And of course, that's also pitched the leadership of the Senate, even against the party to some extent. So you couldn't really achieve the synergy expected. Of course, you also had problems. You know, we had issues. The Senate had some issues with the executive as well. And then, of course, you also have a situation where some of the members of the leadership are even still in court.
All right, many challenges really.
So you have to take on board all these things.
And despite all these challenges, the 8th National Assembly was able to hold the first joint public hearing on the budget in 2017.
Oh, yes.
Made public its budget.
And that's quite commendable.
It's quite a first, really, seen in the Nigerian Senate. So don't you think that's quite commendable, really, for what we've seen so far in the Nigerian history?
That's one of the things that I said. You still have to commend them, at least for what they have been able to do. And of course, part of the lawmaking is even this constitutional amendment. Yes. And quite a number of items, you know, came on board, which they have been able to. Well, whether these amendments are far-reaching enough or not, that's another issue. But at least to the extent of having, you know, giving a definite time.
We'll get to that.
For.
Okay, of course, we'd like you to actually break down, especially when it comes to review of the 1999 Constitution, which many people have been reacting different ways. Depends on where, you know, which side of the divide you really belong. But let's even look at it generally. The job of the Senate, like you rightly said, you know, to legislate for good governance, peace and welfare of the people while serving as a check on the executive. If you look at the definition of, you know, what the job description of the National Assembly, specifically the Senate, would you say they have really delivered in these areas?
Well,
at least within the last 2 years.
Is like I said, taking on board all these, you know, limitations that they are confronted with. Don't also forget that this is the first time we are having a Senate, in particular, that its leadership is bipartisan. The Deputy Senate President is not from the ruling party. It never happened before.
Yes. Is that a good thing?
Well, it depends on how you look at it.
Okay.
Yes, you know, you may look at it and say, well, you know,
it's democracy.
On the part of democracy,
is democracy. But again, you can also look at it and say, wouldn't that slow down, you know, the activities of the ruling party in terms of its plans and programs and you know, policies and all that. Okay. So all that is now. So, but taking everything on board, the expectations, the limitations, I would still say the present National Assembly, at least I will give a pass. Let me just put it that way.
Okay. So, yes. Some Nigerians really believe that the present Senate, National Assembly, especially the Senate now, is kind of self-serving. If you look at some of the items for amendment, the clause put in there now that if constituents want to recall their representatives at the National Assembly, they would have to, you know, get permission from the National Assembly. Doesn't power reside in the people?
Well, to the best of my own knowledge, the National Assembly, or the, you know, well, whether the Senate or the House of Representatives has no role in the recall process, to the best of my knowledge. If you look at Section 6, I think that's Section 69 of the Constitution, it's clear the process. It's the constituency that is, you know, affected, and the INEC, the election management body. Those are the people. All that the leadership does at the end of it all is to give effect when the outcome is presented to it, and give effect to what had been carried out.
All right, let's look at there's a general perception out there that the Nigerian Senate has become some sort of financial burden on governance in Nigeria. People are even calling for a unicameral legislature and saying, look, let's just do away with either of the two, the Senate or the lower house. I wonder where you stand on that.
Well, I mean, it's not a new call. It's been there for quite a while.
Yes.
But you see, I always argue that democracy must be seen for what it is. It's a process. It's not a destination. That is why even America, where we copied most of what we have, what we're doing, the presidential democracy, they have been at it for over 200 years. Britain has been in it for, I mean, almost 500 or more than, you know, parliamentary democracy, presidential democracy and all that. Now, what I need to stress here is the people. Because that's the common denominator. Government of the people, by the people, for the people. So if it's what the people want, all well and good. It's just to say that whichever one you choose, whether unicameral or bicameral, has its merits and demerits. But definitely one of the demerits, so to speak, quote and unquote, of bicameral legislature is cost. There's no doubt about it. It's you know, it has a lot of cost attached to it, because you can take, for example, in our situation where you have 109 senators, 3 per state and 1 from the FCT, so giving 109, and then in the House of Representatives you have 360. That's quite huge, no doubt about that. If that is what the people want, let it be.
But do you think this Senate has justified the financial burden on Nigeria and so far in the last 2 years?
Well, it's not a question of you know, deciding whether it has justified or not. No, you have to take a holistic look. One of the reasons why the Senate, in most countries that practice this bicameral thing, particularly the Senate is an institution of stability. That is why representation in the Senate is based on equality of states, as opposed to representation in the House of Representatives, which is based on population. That's why you have in the House of Representatives, of course, the highest number you can have is 24. And that is what Lagos and Kano, you know, each of them has.
Now, what we're not looking at.
Some states have just 6 members in the House, but in the Senate, it's equality. It's 3 per state.
Okay, Senator, what we're not looking at now is not just about the members of the Senate now, but what about the backlog of aides they have? For example, the Senate President just sacked 98 aides. And they were all paid, of course, to say have aides. All the senators have aides.
This is part of the price to pay.
Price to pay for democracy?
Yes. The choice is that of the people to decide. In spite of all this, or taking cognizance of this, you know, budgetary implication, do we still want to continue or not? It's not for me to answer.
So you think it should be open for a referendum?
If that is what the people want, let it be. Unfortunately, referendum, as it affects amendment of the Constitution, does not exist.
Okay,
now how can the people then decide that this is what we want? Because
now,
so far,
in the first place,
it seems Nigerians are powerless.
The thing is this. You see, let me also make it clear that the National Assembly, as presently constituted and as presently empowered by the present Constitution, does not have powers to write a new Constitution. It only has powers to amend. If you want a new constitution, then you must put in place a constituent assembly. And again, you can't even put in place a constituent assembly without an enabling act from the National Assembly.
Yes.
So, I'm saying that whatever the people choose to do, it still has to be put in place by an enabling act of the National Assembly.
The same act has to be put in place by the same National Assembly. So it still goes back to them at the end of the day. Now, let's look at the Constitution review and, you know, some of the rejections to some of the vital aspects of the Constitution. Of course, Ekweremadu has said some of those rejected points will be looked at again. We need to put that out there. Devolution of powers, Land Use Act, of course, 35% affirmation or affirmative action for women and all of that. Do you think that the National Assembly has done the exact opposite of what the people want in this particular case?
No, no, I won't say the National Assembly has done the exact opposite. But that's why I said, as part of my opening remarks, that whether what has been done is far-reaching enough or not.
Or does it reflect the wishes of the people?
That's it. For example, at this point in time, what you have in the front burner in terms of, issues in a discourse at, national level, is this devolution of powers. That is, whether you call it devolution of powers, whether you call it true federalism, whether you call it restructuring, by and large, they all aggregate to same thing, which is that shedding the weight at the center.
Okay.
You have, for example, 68 items on the exclusive legislative list, where you just have about 30 items on the concurrent. And the Constitution says that even where the state makes a law that is in conflict with that of the federal, that of the state gives way to the extent of inconsistency. So, which means at the end of the day, it's like we are practicing a unitary system as opposed to a true federal system. Okay. So, and that is why you have so much agitation in the land right now. And people are saying, just limit a few items to the center. Maybe currency, defense, foreign affairs, and just a few items, probably not up to 10 items, as opposed to 68. That
so based on that, don't you think the Senate has failed on that score?
Well, definitely, I would say they have not met with the yearnings and aspirations of the people.
Okay, let's look at
no doubt about that, on that score. And maybe one of the reasons, again, is that I think everything, was lumped together under one item, as opposed to separating the issues, which can now be passed one by one.
One by one, okay.
Yes, because that's the way to go, and that's the way they went for the other. Each item is crafted into a bill that is now presented. You recall that from history, from experience, I think that was the Senate, that's the 6th Senate, no, the 5th Senate, or the 5th National Assembly. You recall that all those items were put together under one bill. And when this issue of tenure elongation failed, that just aborted the entire exercise. So now, taking cue from that, they decided to now separate items one by one and pass them one by one. That's the benefit of hindsight and experience.
Okay, so the affirmative action for women bill that failed in the Senate under the Not Too Young to Run bill, because the Senate President has promised that it will be featured in the gender equality bill now to be presented in the Senate. But then, in this present day democracy across the world, women are getting more empowered. Kenya just voted about 3 female governors that will be sworn in. And the Nigerian women are still clamoring for recognition, about 35%.
Countries like Rwanda is about almost 50%.
In the representative, 64% actually. And a woman is the speaker in Rwanda. So it seems that Nigeria, yes, is the big brother of Africa, as been said everywhere. But then when it comes to coming to the table and empowering women and looking at achieving the targets of SDGs, women cannot be relegated at background. But it doesn't seem like the Senate will give women a chance, because recall the senator was saying that the only way we can help women in Nigeria at this time is to marry second wives.
No, that's just trivializing the issue. Now the thing is, if you ask me, I'll tell you for free that I'm for it. Okay, but having said that, it will not be right to just compare ourselves with other countries and all that. Yes, so much is expected of us as the big brother, the giant of Africa and all that. But the experience, particularly the historical issues in Kenya or in Rwanda, they are not necessarily the same for Nigeria. And that's why, again, that brings me back to what I said earlier on. It's a democracy is a process. And you continue to react to issues
depending as they arise.
Yes.
Okay, let's look at some of the.
Have to take that.
Let's quickly look at other issues. You know, that landmark events in the course of this Senate in the last 2 years or so. The rejection of Magu, the EFCC chairman, of acting, he remains acting. To what extent, really, can the Senate, or should the Senate exercise powers to reject or to confirm him? Because that has been a subject of debate too. And then, of course, you have the issue of the budget for the Senate that is way beyond what areas like education and all of that are getting. And the recall, for the first time, attempts, move to recall Dino Melaye.
But I already put a clause, of course, in the amendment that
Yes,
people have to get back to them for that to happen.
Now, let me say this again, that the Legislative House, whether the Senate or the House of Representatives, is primarily a political institution. It is not a judicial institution. I mean, I need to state that clearly.
Okay.
A judicial institution like the court, where you have the judge seated, listening to arguments from the plaintiffs and defendants, lawyers, and then using the points of law to determine, the judgment and subsequently the ruling. That's not the Legislative House is a political institution where you necessarily have political influences coming to play. But again, to what extent should these political influences, come into play? It should not be to the detriment of the yearnings and aspirations of the people. Having said that, now, the issue of confirmation of appointment is vested, such power is vested in the Senate for certain offices, whether as you have them in the Constitution or you have them in any other law. Of course, every law takes its root from the Constitution. So you still have to put in place or exercise the rule of law. So to that extent, the Senate definitely will have its reasons for rejection of, but to the best of my own understanding, I'm not a lawyer, I'm a medical doctor, but my experience is that the power given to the Senate or any legislative house cannot be stretched beyond. You cannot stretch your powers beyond what you have, which is the power to confirm or not to confirm.
Okay.
But by the time it's stretched to now say, because the Senate doesn't have the power of appointment, it's the power of confirmation. So there are two different things.
On certain appointments.
On certain appointments.
All right. Thank you very much for your analysis at this time. Quite interesting. Senator Olorunimbe Mamora, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much.